a phenomenal storyteller. And we have been so privileged to have her as part of many of our projects over the years, but in particular over the last couple of years in our Istimela Sindaba, our storytelling project, which is a collaboration with Play Africa. But Baeletsi has a wealth of experience, and I'm so looking forward to hearing what she has to say in this workshop. So I'm going to hand over to you, Baeletsi, and I'll keep an eye on the chat and the questions and answers, and we'll pick those up if you haven't covered them in what you're going to be saying. Please unmute yourself, Baeletsi.
All right. Thank you, Yvette, for that warm welcome, and welcome everybody. It is great to be with you at the Creative Arts Conference of 2020. And because our session is quite short, I'm going to jump into it, because what I would like to do today is look at how we can use Indigenous languages quite simply in the classroom, in our stories, in our everyday lives. And then what I would also like to look at is what steps can you take to successfully tell a story. So let's jump straight into it. I've got some polls for you, some questions. When they do come up questions, please answer them, because I want to hear where you were standing. As Yvette has mentioned, storyteller, I love stories, and I hope that you love stories too. Cool. So let's start right at the top, right? Indigenous languages. When we look at South Africa and South Africa right now, we are not using Indigenous languages enough. We are not learning Indigenous languages enough. We are not interacting with Indigenous languages enough. And you know why? Because Indigenous languages are not put out there, right? So when we look at the statistics, only 2% of books that are published in South African languages, that is only 2% for children. That's simply not enough. That means 98% of books that are published for children in South Africa are in English or not in an Indigenous language. So that is a crisis, people. Teachers, that is a crisis. That is not a problem, because we look at organizations that say, we are right in the middle of a crisis. How can we make this better? So we've got organizations like Dash that help publish high quality South African books for children. We've got organizations like Cadbury that are jumping onto that literacy crisis at the moment. We've got organizations like Africa Storybook. We've got organizations like Nali Bali. And these guys, what they're doing is they're writing stories, they're commissioning writers to write South African authentic stories, and then going out and translating them into 11 official languages. And they have supplements that you can use in the classroom. They have material and resources that can help you bridge the gap between the English and the South African language. But that is simply just the written text. At Acetate South Africa, we have storytellers, a library, a big online library of storytellers telling great stories in different South African languages. So if you read the language, you're like, I don't know if I can do this. You know what? Hop onto our YouTube page. We've got all the stories with all the right people to give you the confidence to implement this in your own classroom. And I'm also going to be sharing the links and the organizations that I've spoken about, so that you can go back and use them in your own time. So I have asked a question. I've asked 4 questions in the poll that I would like you to engage with as we are going. And the first one, listen music. Do you listen to music not English? As and people listening music in languages, it is important to listen to music in different languages because the rhythm of the music makes you uncomfortable to just say the word. So different language allows us to kind of train our tongue to do the necessary gymnastics that is necessary when we are learning different languages. Number one, that is the thing I use a lot in my work. Music that is not in English, music in a different language. And how can you use that effectively? I was in Grahamstown this year, and I had a song about a butterfly. This is a song from my childhood. I sang it when I was a child. It was a game, and the word is Sirurubele. That word means butterfly in my home language, Setswana, right? So now we've got Sirurubele, we've got butterfly, and I asked the kids whose local language is Xhosa, what is butterfly in your language? And they taught it to me, Ibabatane. I didn't know what butterfly was before. Now I know. And together with the kids, we made the song in 3 different languages. You see, we've got the comfort of the beat, we've got the ease of the rhythm, and now we can start playing with new words. So that is very important. Music that is not in your home language, not just music that's not in English, but music that's not in your home language will teach you some things about other languages, other cultures, and make you all the more richer in your storytelling. And then I asked another question. Thank you, people. I can see that you're engaging with the poll. The results are going up. We are going to check them out at the end. And then the second question in the poll is, what is your home language? Right? I have just told you how I taught kids a song that I grew up playing, that I grew up singing. Don't look far. We make the mistake of thinking we need to look very, very far. And when we start to look very, very far, we encounter material that we're not immediately confident to deal with. We encounter languages that are foreign to us. So when you look at your background, when you look at your home languages, when you look at the richness of your home language, you can work your way from there. I've got Sirurubele, and now I can learn butterfly, but now I can also learn Ipapatane. So these are the things that you can use to enrich your work with your home language. What are the words in your home language? What is that animal called in your home language? What is that flower called in your home language? What is this color called in your home language? And learning small words like this and implementing them in your work can give people an introduction to your home language, can give people an introduction to your culture, but it can also put you in a place where you're comfortable to start playing with things that you know and realize just how rich they are. So we're not far. Look very close. Look very close. What languages do you know? And how can you use them effectively? That is what we want. And then the third question in the poll says, what are the magical story starting words? Oh, of course you know these words. You definitely know these words. Once upon a time. Now, you know the magic words, but do you know what to do after you've said the magic words? That is what we are going to be doing for this next part of the session. But before we go back to, before we move on to the story part of this, I just want to do a quick recap of the indigenous languages and how you can use them effectively in your classroom. So, number one, listen to music in a different language that is not English, preferably, so that you can loosen your tongue, you can loosen your body, and you can loosen your confidence to approach the language in a spoken context. Number two is look at your home language or the languages that you have access to that are not English or yes, that are not English or another indigenous language, and work your way from there. Work with material that you're already comfortable with, introduce people to your own culture, and realize the wealth and the richness that your language has and impart that. I say that language is attributed value by how we interact with it. So if you raise the standard and the bar of your home language, and you treat it with respect, and you treat it with pride, and you bring it into the classroom, we also want to learn it. We are now interested in it. I went to Kenya, and the storytellers there pride themselves in their local languages. They know the proverbs, they know the history, they know who the local tricksters are in their languages. I left Kenya thinking, I want to learn Luo. Nobody in South Africa speaks Luo. Listen, that was my first encounter with Luo, or my first encounter really with Swahili. But the way the storytellers interacted with the language gave it value and made me respect it and want to interact with it more. So if you're a teacher, if you're a storyteller, if you're an artist, the way you interact with the language of your choice will give people confidence and respect and value with how they interact with the language too. All right. If you've got questions, people, keep them coming. Yvette is looking at what you are saying, and she is going to brief me right at the end. Okay, so now to the storytelling part. Now we know the songs. Now we know the words in our different languages. Where can we use them? In stories. That is the best way to use your new learned languages. But where do we start? With Once Upon a Time, definitely, but where else do we go? Now, I'm going to take you through a very easy 5-step process that I use when I am telling stories or when I am learning a new story. This process is simple. Simple, simple, simple is what I'm aiming for. And you can use it again and again and again and again. And I am giving it to you freely today. Please go ahead and use it. Step number 1 is find a story. Of course, if you're going to tell a story, you need to have a story, right? Find a story. And because Rustenburg is in Cape Town, I'm going to use Xhosa as my example and show you how you can work with a language, but also work with a community and also work in a context of a school or in like an education context. So number 1, find a story, right? I'm looking for a story about the Xhosa people of the Eastern Cape. What am I looking for? Their history, where they come from, their traditional clothes, the food that they like, and the songs that they sing, the different traditional rituals that they do. I've got my story now. Nice, good times. Let's go. Number 2, make highlights. You know what? You will never remember everything. That is just the nature of life. I've been a storyteller for many years, and I know you will not remember everything. Do not put yourself under the pressure to want to. All right. And that is why we make highlights. So we break our story down into small parts that will help us remember it, that will help us maintain the timeline, and that will help us get to the point, my friends. Because if we don't keep order of what we want to achieve, we can go on and on and on. And the learners are falling asleep, or the audience is falling asleep, bored by you going on and on and on. So we need to make highlights. And let's look at my story of the Xhosa people of the Eastern Cape and the Western Cape, right? Highlight number 1, origin, Eastern Cape, Western Cape, South Africa. Who are the famous people that we know that are Xhosa? Of course, President Nelson Mandela, number 1. And then who are some of the musicians who sing in isiXhosa? We look at those people. What are the Xhosa statistics? Where are they? How did they become? How did they move from the rural areas into the cities? And what work are they doing now? And then another thing that I can look at is what are the folk tales? What is the art? What are the stories that the Xhosa people are telling each other, right? And now I know where to start. Once upon a time in South Africa, there was a group of people who were called the Xhosa people. One of the most famous people who was Xhosa in South Africa was President Nelson Mandela. Xhosa people, they wear beautiful black and white clothes to weddings, to funerals, or to all sorts of celebrations. And they dot their beautiful faces with various patterns. Oh, they also love stories. They also love music. They sing songs. They tell stories at their many celebrations. You see, because I know where I'm going, I can start to make my story. Number 3, draw a map. All right. Need to make it visual. Yes, the story is told, but when I'm telling the story, I am painting the picture. They're not just Xhosa people in the Eastern Cape, they're Xhosa people from the rolling hills of the Eastern Cape. So when you draw a map, you start to work with the images of the environment, of the people, and of the story. Where are they? Is Eastern Cape close to Northern Cape? Is Eastern Cape close to Gauteng? Is Western Cape close to Eastern Cape? So you can start to play with space and with dimension once you draw a map of your story. All right. I think we are doing good because now we are going to number 4. Number 4 says, ask it questions. Sure, you do your research and it tells you that, the most famous Xhosa person is Utata Nelson Mandela. Has Utata Nelson Mandela given a speech in isiXhosa? Maybe you start to look for that speech. Mm, all right, I hear this song in isiXhosa, but what does this specific word mean? You start to ask it questions, and your story grows from there. So the last step, which is the best step, my most favorite step, number 5, tell your story. All right. What's the point of learning a story, my friends, if you are not going to tell it? Okay. And when you tell your story, what are the things that you are looking at? You are looking at the people you are telling your story. Eye contact is very, very important. You're not telling your story like this. You're not telling your story like this. You're not telling your story like this. You are telling your story like this and giving it generously and freely to the people who are listening. Number 2, sure, you've made eye contact and everything. Know your story. Rehearse, rehearse, rehearse. Before you make eye contact with us, come knowing your story. If you're a teacher and you're standing in front of learners and you are ill prepared, you know that they know, right? Exactly. So if I'm a storyteller and I'm standing in front of an audience and I'm ill prepared, I'm not the only one who knows the secret. They can see it and it can show. So when you practice your story, you also build up your confidence, you build up your momentum, and you build the trust that people are going to be listening to you, they're going to be receiving your story, and they're going to enjoy it. Number 3, enjoy yourself. Really enjoy yourself. Don't be too worried about, oh, are the learners going to enjoy my story, or is the audience going to enjoy my story? If you are telling your story yourself and you're like, once upon a time in Eastern Cape, you're not having fun, I'm also not having fun. It's that simple. So if you are having fun, you give the listener permission to also have fun. All right. So make eye contact, rehearse, and have fun. That is it for performance. But I'm quickly going to go over the 5-step process. And then we are going to look at the poll, we are going to look at the chat, and I will take a couple of questions. But remember what I said in the beginning, I will community post all the links with the resources where you can get them, and I will answer questions that I want to manage to answer in this session. Story making process. Number 1, find a story. Number 2, make highlights. Number 3, draw a map. Number 4, ask it questions. It is your story. Number 5, tell your story. And that's it. After that, you can only tell more and more stories. Yvette, I see you're unmuted.
Yes, thanks so much, Baeletsi. I'm just loving this, and I'm seeing so many wonderful comments in the chat. and people are really enthusiastic about starting to tell stories. So that's really great. I have a question for you, which isn't in the chat, so I'm going to be sneaky and get it in quickly, which is, when I watch you telling stories, you are so great at engaging the children. What are the tips that you can give us about how to go about engaging the children, how to really bring them into the story and make them feel like they're active participants in it?
Absolutely. Great question. Thanks, Yvette. Engagement is very important. Engagement makes kids present, number one. It makes them feel like, oh, yeah, we are needed here and we need to be a part of this thing. It makes them feel important that we're being asked for something. The minute I asked the kids in Makanda, what is butterfly in your language? They raised up their hands. Their eyes sparkled because now we are also contributors to this thing. So number one, I would say treat kids with agency. They're not stupid. They're not like not knowing anything. They will amaze you. Entrust them with questions. Engage children. Get to know where they're standing and what they know. When I walk into a performance or a session, I always ask a question, related to that. And I try to incorporate the question in my storytelling. I will ask, what is the name of frog in your local language? And then I will start to use that word for frog in my in my story. But better yet, I would say, and then they would call out the frog in their language and the story would continue. So entrusting them with small responsibilities like that in the story makes them feel very involved and ownership and proud. And then number two, songs. That is the thing that I love to use. Music makes us relax. That is why we are confident to sing in different languages that we don't normally speak, because there's something that music does. I'm sure there are music teachers here at the conference who can elaborate a little bit more on what music does to the psychology of the child, but also just to make them relax. Use music, whether it's singing, whether it's recorded music and getting everybody to dance. Music is one way for us to feel less self-conscious. So once children are feeling less self-conscious and confident, they jump straight into it. And then, so number one, get them involved in many various ways. Number two, use music in different ways, singing with your own voice, but also play music. And then number three, respect. Respect. Adults often make the mistake that because they are adults, children should just respect them. But respect is mutual. And if you don't respect children, they don't trust you. That affects how they trust you. And if they don't trust you, they're not listening to the story. I'm going to tell you that for free. A lot of storytelling thrives on the trust. That is why it's important to do this, to look at people and let them know that I see you and I'm in the room with you and the story is here. If kids don't trust you, the story is just not going anywhere. And they don't trust you because you are not showing them respect. Yes, they're smaller than you, but they're worthy of respect. This is your audience. These are people who are on the receiving end of your work, and these are people whose engagement you need, who make the world richer. So respect children. That is number three.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm looking at the
Yvette, have you
questions
spotted
and
any questions
answers.
from the?
Yes, I'm looking at the questions here, and so I know that you've answered some in the chat already, but I think that maybe we can just add a little bit to what you've said. So one of the questions that was asked, which I think you did give a reply to, was is it better if the teacher tells the story, or this person was asking this in relation to grade 4. I'm just wondering what your thoughts are. So we've just been talking about interaction. Obviously, you want to encourage interaction. Are there ways to bring the children in, or should the teacher always start? What are your ideas about that?
Eventually you want to encourage the children to tell the stories, right? as a teacher, it's when children tell the story, it has a different quality. It's just so much more magical. But they need to be shown the guidelines. So I would say for the first couple of sessions as a teacher, tell the story and then engage them in these different ways. Ask them for different words, ask them for songs, ask them for names, ask them for images, give them characters, give them dialogue, bring them in the story so that they can start getting comfortable with the world of the story or with the idea of storytelling, and then start giving them small responsibilities. As opposed to me, I will tell the whole story by myself. If you're entrusting the learners to tell the story, get one to tell the beginning, another one to tell the middle, and another one to tell the end. And that way, and then another one to do the song, maybe another one to also do the dialogue. And that way they can start to collaborate and work in community in that way and start to grow as storytellers. And once you see that they're comfortable and they're getting there as the teacher, then you can start to give them short stories to come and tell in the classroom. But definitely, teacher, start and lead the way.
Lovely. And I think what's so clear in what you've been saying is how all the arts really come together in such an integrated way in storytelling. It involves our bodies, it involves music, it involves obviously acting, drama, character, all of those things. And yet we also are developing language skills. Yeah, it's such an integrated form. Fantastic. I know that we are needing to wrap up.
You are a teacher and you want to incorporate.
Finish your thought, Baeletsi, and then to finish your thought, and then we'll need to wrap up.
Yes, I'll say if you're a teacher and you want to incorporate various artistic disciplines in your classroom, storytelling is the best way to do it. The frog can dance, the elephant can sing, the cat can paint. So you have a lot of opportunity to use various disciplines when you are using storytelling. It can help to frame the work that you want to do. All right, I think we need to wrap up. So I'm just going to say thank you, everybody. I am going to put the resources in the community, check them out, and I hope you tell stories in your classrooms and in your communities.
Thank you so much, Baeletsi. Thank you for this rich session. And I think we're going to be picking up these themes later today as we look at integration and synergy between the arts. Thank you so much for this really energizing session. It's been wonderful to have you share all your powerful ideas with us.